Hey everybody, Koricon Nala here, and we're going to start a series for Season 7 of Game of Thrones. This is Episode 1. Now, all of these are going to be spoiler talk. I'm going to get into like a recap of the episode and then give my review and thoughts on everything. So, very much spoilers. If you haven't seen the episode, click away, go watch it, come back, and we'll talk about it. Alright? So, you've been warned! Episode 1 is called Dragonstone, which kind of gives us an idea of what the central piece of the episode is going to be. You know, probably Daenerys coming to Dragonstone or something more about Dragonstone. It's going to be a central point of the episode. And we opened up with Walder Frey poisoning all of the leaders of the Riverlands. Now, he died at the end of Season 6. Arya Stark killed him. So when it first came on, I was like, is this a backflash? Or, you know, and then you noticed that it was going to be poisoning, and I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't him. When's the reveal? And everyone dies, and then sure enough, pulls the mask off, and it's Arya Stark. I thought that was a great way of opening the episode. Everybody wants to see Arya get her revenge on everybody. And it's starting off with like, yep, we're going to get some of that in this season, which is great. I'm excited about that. I want to see her get some revenge. But she basically kills all the leaders except for, or in the room, and left the wives alone. But you kind of, she pulled the mask off, I had this flash of the Mission Impossible twists in all of the Mission Impossible movies where they pull the mask off, which got kind of repetitive after a while. They were pulling the mask off like 3 or 4 times in a movie for like the second movie. But I love the fact that Arya is starting her revenge thing. She's on her own. She's badass. She's awesome. So I'm loving that. After that, we headed up north, and we got to see that winter is coming. They had a great long shot of the distance of the snow, and then you have the winter like billowing towards the camera. And as we come in, you see all the White Walkers walking past the camera. But what really caught my eye were the giants. Giant White Walkers. That is awesome. Oh, I'm so excited. I want to see them battle. One of my favorite parts of the battles in Season 6 were the giants. I loved that one giant, and I can't remember his name, but the one that died at the end of the Battle of the Bastards. So I'm excited to see some giant White Walkers. I think that's going to add a nice dynamic to whatever battle sequence we end up getting. Hopefully, near the end of this season, we start battling some White Walkers. But they always tend to give us like 1 or 2 scenes a season, and then that's it. But we're coming into the last 2 seasons, so hopefully we get something. I want more. I want more of the White Walkers. And then Bran Stark finally shows up at the wall. He's been over in the north for a long time. So it's great to see that he's finally coming back to the wall, which means he'll probably end up rejoining with Sansa and Jon probably in the next episode or 2, hopefully next episode, because I would like to see them all together. And you don't really need to waste any more time with his storyline. You don't need any other scenes, which is probably why that was the only scene we had of him in this episode, was to show that he was there. And then the next episode, he'll meet Jon and Sansa, they'll be reunited, everything will cheer, yay, they'll have a feast, woohoo! So that'll be great that he's finally back. Then we joined in with Jon Snow and Sansa at a meeting with all of the other leaders and allies, and he's saying that they need to find dragon glass. They need to find a lot of dragon glass so they can fight these White Walkers. And he mentions that not just the men and boys are going to have to fight, the women are going to have to fight as well. We need as many people in there as possible. And one guy stands up and he's like, "You want me to put a spear in my daughter's hand?" And then the super awesome Lyanna Mormont stands up, basically tells that guy off and says, you know, it's my land also. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going to fight for my land. And the guy's like, okay. And sits down. So I was like, yes, she was awesome. I loved her very short scenes that she had in season 6. Very much of a highlight. So it's awesome to see that she's back in full force. She's a feisty girl. I love it. So I want to see more of her in the future as well. Jon Snow was trying to say about the houses not giving the castles over to other allies instead of keeping it in the family, just making the family allies, which makes sense to me. So I understand both sides of the argument. Now, what Sansa is saying, okay, this family has proven that they're not with us, so let's give it to one of our allies so that we can make sure that we have an ally there. That makes sense. But then Jon Snow is saying, I'm not going to fault the son of the sins of the father, and then brings the 2 kids of that household forward and basically asks them for their allegiance. And they kneel down and give allegiance. You can tell they're extremely nervous. But I can see his point of view as well. One, you kind of gain a strong ally by showing forgiveness. But also, they don't have to reestablish leadership roles with their armies. So if another family comes in to take that castle, that's an ally of the Starks, they now have to become the leader of all of the men of the armies of the area. And that takes a lot of time. But if he just shows forgiveness and then gets the allegiance from the family by the children, they already have established leadership roles with those armies. So it would be no question that they would end up supporting. Well, for the most part, like they could just say, hey, all of my soldiers and people's army, let's go help the Starks. And then they'll just go. Like there's no question on leadership because it's been established already. So from Jon's point of view, I can understand it more just because you don't have to reestablish leadership roles. The army is already, for their land, is already a part of that family and will do what they say even if it's the kids that are saying it, just like Lyanna Mormont. But Sansa I understand also, but I think Jon is in the right on this one just because they don't have to question the army. The army will be there. Now, if only Sansa and Jon could work together, it would be incredible. But I still feel this little tension between them. I don't know if Sansa really wants to try and take control, but she does want to have a leadership role. She doesn't want to be pushed to the side, obviously. If Jon brings her in and accepts a lot of her thoughts and opinions and makes her a part of the group, then it won't be a big deal. And they'll be very strong together. But if he keeps pushing her away a little bit or not really looking at her advice, then the leadership is going to falter. So I would really like to see that and get Littlefinger out of there. I mean, I know we need his armies. Sansa points that out. We need his armies. But man, the guy likes to stick his finger in there, his little finger, and mess things up. Especially between Sansa and Jon. I can see him being a big problem between those two. And Sansa had said that she learned a lot from Cersei. I don't know how much of a good thing that is, but she has learned a lot about leadership and things like that. But you don't want her to learn the negative parts. So Cersei sent a letter to Jon Snow in the north, basically, you know, saying again that they need to show allegiance to King's Landing and the throne. I don't know why I mean, she's going crazy. She's got to be, because she's spreading herself way too thin. She already, and they pointed it out in the show, she even mentioned it, we have enemies to the south, enemies to the west, and enemies to the east, and enemies to the north. Well, you really didn't have much of an enemy to the north, in that they're not looking to fight you right now. They're concentrated on what's on the other side of the wall. They could care less what you're doing down there. And they're not worried about you coming up to fight them. So just leave them alone and concentrate on the enemies you have to deal with right now. But instead, she's picking a fight with everyone. She wants everybody to show allegiance to her like right away, and she's spreading herself too thin. She then invites the Ironborn, Euron Greyjoy, who took control over the Ironborn, to come down. He brought 1,000 ships and basically said, like, we have the strongest armada. We will show our allegiance to you, but I want to get married. And she's like, no. But they had fought each other before, and there was a great scene where he's like, Jaime Lannister, when I first heard that you were this amazing warrior, I didn't really believe it. But then when I saw you on the battlefield, you came out on the horse and just chopping people down. It was a beautiful sight to witness. And Jaime's like, the people I was cutting down were your own kin. And Euron is like, place was getting crowded. I enjoyed watching it. I like that line. I thought it was pretty funny. But it does show how crazy he is too. But he said, I'm going to go get you a gift. Women, he said, basically said, women love gifts. I'm going to get you a great gift to show that we should be married. And then he walks off. I don't know what that gift is. My thinking is maybe he's going to try and get Tyrion Lannister back and then give him over to Cersei. It was a gut feeling. I mean, we'll see what happens with that. He's with Daenerys right now. He's pretty well protected. She's got dragons. So we'll see. Maybe he'll find something else that's really important to her. And then we finally got to see Samwell again. He's at the Citadel, but things are not going very great for him. He's basically a slave. Not a slave. He's a servant. But he's like, they have this disgusting montage between serving the food and then picking up the sick people that were their bowel movements under the bed, using the bowls, cleaning the bowls. They showed that cycle like over and over again with him like wanting to throw up. That is so disgusting. And then him wanting to get a hold of the books. He was sent there to try and find a way of destroying the White Walkers. They're not letting him have access to the books that he needs to do that research. And instead, he's just become like a servant there. And he's getting really frustrated. And so they had this scene with him and a maester, and they're working on a dead body. He's doing an autopsy. And basically is told, don't worry about it. Winter has come before and it'll go again. Like they seem to just dismiss the whole idea. They're like, people have said that the world was going to end many times. It never does. Which is disheartening. So he stole the keys from one of the maesters when he went in to do his bowel movement cleaning. He stole the keys and then went into the restricted section and got the books, basically stole the ones that he wanted to research with and read over, and discovered Dragonstone is sitting on top of a mountain of dragon glass, which makes perfect sense. It's the Dragonstone. It's on a mountain of dragon glass. There's going to be dragons there. So he sent a message up north to Jon Snow to let him know that there is dragon glass in them thar hills. So that would be interesting. That's pretty cool. I'll talk more about that later. Then Arya Stark is traveling and she comes across a band of soldiers from King's Landing. One of them is singing really well, and it turns out to be Ed Sheeran. Which I was like, why is Ed Sheeran But I guess it makes sense, You have a cameo. I'm sure anybody that had a chance to have a cameo in Game of Thrones is going to take it. And if you're going to have Ed Sheeran do a cameo in your show, you might as well have him sing in some way. But I'm glad it wasn't cheesy. It could easily become cheesy and like, I've got a cameo. But instead it was around a campfire. He's singing a song. But you see that a lot where people will have like a little guitar or an instrument or sing at a campfire with soldiers. It's a normal thing. It wasn't heavy, trying to say, look, it's Ed Sheeran. It's Ed Sheeran. They weren't doing that. He was just singing a song at the campfire. It's all good. And then she sits down and is sharing a small meal with them. And she's getting personal information about them. Like, one guy has a family, his wife is pregnant. He's hoping she has a daughter. And when Arya asked him why, he said, because the men get sent off to war, and I don't want my child to be sent off to someone else's war. And then another person is saying, I've been told if I am nice to people, they'll be nice to me. And they're kind of setting up this thing where she's learning about the individuals of the soldiers. Maybe she's going to spare their lives. Could be that she's just going to slaughter them and doesn't care. And they use that to show that she has no mercy whatsoever. But Ed Sheeran was just sitting there, a part of the group, but they weren't like trying to show him too much. And they had the other soldiers. It was a great moment where she was getting involved. And then they asked her, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" She's like, "King's Landing." "Oh, what are you going to be doing there?" She's like, "I'm going to kill the queen." And they all start laughing, and she laughs, but she was very nonchalant about it. She's like, "Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go kill the queen." Great. Arya is going to be awesome this season. I'm really excited to see what she does. And then we got a short scene with the Hound. They show up. He's traveling with the followers of the Lord of Light, and they come to this abandoned house. Not really abandoned. There's two people that are dead in there, a father and his daughter. They were like a skeleton, and one guy sets up a fire, and Hound is basically asking the guy, "Why does the light keep bringing you back to life? Like, you're a nobody. You don't deserve to be alive. This little girl over here deserves to be alive more than you do." And he's like, "I don't know why. They just do. I must have a purpose." And then he was looking at the fire. They ask him to look at the fire, and he has a vision of the wall and the White Walkers. So I'm sure they're heading north, probably, maybe to help out. We'll see what happens with the Hound. His story has become more interesting to me as the seasons went on. And I think his time, because later on, he's burying the two bodies of the father and the daughter. And the guy's like, "Why are you doing that?" And he's like, "They deserve to be buried." So he buries them. And it shows a little bit of sensitivity that he didn't really have before. So his time with Arya, when they were traveling around in the previous seasons, I think really touched on him. And he's got a bit of a softiness to his heart. It's always been there, but it's kind of becoming more prominent now. You can see him kind of calming down. But I'm curious to see where his character goes. I wonder if he's going to end up sacrificing his life to save somebody else, because it feels like that's where they're going. So we go back to Samwell after he had sent the message to Jon Snow about the dragon glass, and he's walking through this hallway. It looks like a bunch of prison cells, and he's basically collecting empty food bowls. And he gets to one door, and a hand comes through, and it's got the stoneman, the grayscale. And it turns out to be Jorah Mormont. He's in the cell at the Citadel, so we know where he is now. But he's locked up. He's not really finding a cure if he's in there. But if he's at the Citadel, it could be that one of the maesters, probably the one that we saw earlier doing the autopsy, is probably trying to find a cure. And so maybe these people in the cell are his test subjects. And Jorah may have asked to be there, and they just put them in the cells to keep them separate so they don't infect anybody else. And he could just be waiting to see if one of the tests that happen is the actual cure so that he can get one. Because that's what he was searching for, and he said he would do anything for the cure. So hopefully he gets cured by the maesters at the Citadel and can rejoin Daenerys, if she'll have him. But that would be great. It was cool seeing him there. I wasn't quite expecting it until I saw the arm come through, and I was like, "Oh, is that Jorah?" And it was. But it's kind of cool. Maybe we'll get some great interaction between Jorah and Samwell. That's what I'm liking about this season so far, is everybody is coming together, and so you have characters that have never met before interacting with each other. It's great. I love it. And then at the end, we have Daenerys showing up on the shores of Dragonstone, And they have this entire sequence with no dialogue whatsoever. It's more of her just experiencing the fact that she is back home. They're walking up, they go through, she sees the throne, she walks into the war room. Tyrion is there, and she says, "Shall we begin?" And then the episode is over. Now, one of the things I was wondering about is, why is the Dragonstone empty? Why isn't, because it's a, it's a big strategic spot. So you would think one of the armies around there would be there at Dragonstone, and there was no one there. I mean, even King's Landing, if they had access to it, they should have put an army there, but no one did. It was totally abandoned. If you guys know why Dragonstone was abandoned and nobody took it over again, let me know. I don't know why that is. It was very curious to me. I would think someone would want to have control over that castle. So since Samwell sent that message to Jon about the dragon glass at Dragonstone, that totally sets up a possibility of Jon Snow meeting Daenerys at Dragonstone, or at least some of sending people, and a really good chance of them combining forces and joining up as allies, which is what I would want to see. I think that would be great. It's an obvious way of getting them to meet. You put the dragon glass at Dragonstone, which makes sense, and then Jon and Daenerys have to meet, and then they go and take over everything. But what do you guys think? Did you like episode 1? Are you a Game of Thrones fan? Comment below, let me know your thoughts on this. If you're on VidMe, upvote this, give me a follow and share it around. If you're on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, and I will see you on the next video.